Every morning just before dawn, the sleepy town of Mirpur would begin to stir to life. The sun's first rays would slowly stretch across the narrow, dusty streets, awakening sleepy shopkeepers and early risers. But what no one expected to see was a quiet procession. A small, thin girl walking steadily along the cracked sidewalk, with a lone figure trailing behind her at a distance. Amina was no ordinary child. At just 8 years old, she carried herself with a calm seriousness unusual for her age. Each day, she would leave her aunt's small house on the edge of town, backpack slung over her shoulder, ready for the 7-kilometer walk to the village school. This was routine. No complaints, no running or playing, just a steady, purposeful walk. But what caught the town's attention was the scruffy, stray dog that followed her, never closer than 10 feet, never making a sound. The dog was thin, with matted fur and eyes that glimmered with an intelligence that unsettled those who noticed him. He didn't bark or lunge, didn't even glance around nervously like most strays. He simply walked, matching her pace exactly. The first to spot this unusual sight was Mr. Khan, the grocer, who watched from his shop doorway. "Every day it's the same," he muttered to his wife. "That dog. It never leaves the little." Girl sighed. Soon whispers spread through the town like wildfire. Children at the school began calling the dog the Shadow, and some even told spooky stories about it being a ghost or a spirit, watching over the girl. But Amina didn't seem afraid. When asked why the dog followed her, she would only smile, faintly, and say, "He keeps me safe." No one could understand what she meant. She never tried to pet the dog or talk to it. She just walked with steady steps, glancing back sometimes but never calling to it. One chilly morning, as the sun was barely rising, a group of neighborhood kids gathered behind the schoolyard fence, eyes fixed on Amina and her silent follower. "Maybe the dog wants to hurt her," whispered one boy nervously. "No way," said another. "If he wanted to hurt her, he would have done it by now." Their conversation was interrupted when the dog suddenly stopped walking, ears perked up, eyes scanning the bushes nearby. Amina, unaware, kept moving forward, humming softly to herself. Just then, a man named Bilal, known for his dislike of stray dogs, stepped out from a nearby street. He threw a small rock in the dog's direction, trying to scare it away. The dog flinched but did not bark or chase him. Instead, it simply backed off a few steps and then resumed its position behind Amina. Bilal shook his head in disbelief. "That dog's crazy," he muttered, stalking that girl like some kind of shadow. Amina stopped walking, looked back at the dog and whispered, "Please don't be scared. He's my friend." Her words were barely audible, but they carried a weight that silenced the small crowd. Nobody could explain why Amina felt such a connection to a stray animal no one else trusted. That day, the teacher, Mrs. Samina, called Amina aside after class. "Why does that dog follow you everywhere?" she asked gently. Amina shrugged, eyes downcast. "I don't know. I just feel safe when he's behind me, like he's watching out for me." Mrs. Samina frowned, concerned. "You shouldn't be alone on the road with a stray dog. What if he's dangerous?" Amina shook her head quickly. "He's not." The teacher's worry deepened, and after a few more reports from townsfolk, the local police were informed. Amina's strange shadow was becoming a mystery that no one could ignore. Little did anyone know, the silent dog trailing the little girl was guarding a secret that would soon unravel the town's darkest memories and change Amina's life forever. News of the stray dog following Amina spread quickly through Mirpur, stirring a mix of curiosity and unease among the townsfolk. For some, the idea of a stray dog trailing a little girl day after day was heartwarming, a tale of loyalty and silent friendship. For others, it was unsettling, even frightening. Bilal, the man who had tried to scare the dog away the day before, was among the worried. He couldn't shake the feeling that the dog's constant presence was unnatural, a shadow lurking in the background with unknown intentions. "Dogs can be unpredictable," he told anyone who would listen at the local. "Chai stall. What if it attacks the girl someday? We can't take that risk." At school, the children whispered in the hallways. Some were fascinated, imagining the dog as a loyal guardian or a secret protector. Others were scared. Rumors swirled that the dog might be sick, rabid even, though no one had seen it behave aggressively. Amina remained calm, unaffected by the gossip. Every morning she woke early, prepared for her long walk and set off with the dog trailing quietly behind. She never sped up or slowed down. The dog adjusted its pace perfectly. One afternoon, as Amina passed the edge of town, a group of boys from her class tried to coax the dog forward. "Come on, boy," one teased, holding out a stick. "Why don't you come closer?" The dog hesitated, eyes fixed on Amina, as if waiting for her permission. When she didn't move or call to it, the dog stayed back, watching silently. Amina's best friend, Zara, was the only one who dared speak to her about it. "Why don't you let the dog come near?" she asked after school one day, tugging at Amina's sleeve. Amina's gaze dropped. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not of him, of what might happen if he gets too close. Sometimes I think he remembers something from a long time ago." Zara frowned. "What do you mean?" Amina hesitated. "I don't know. But sometimes when I look at him, I see sadness." Meanwhile, the town's elders grew restless. Several parents had begun urging the school to find a solution. "We can't have a stray dog wandering around the children's route," a few argued at a recent town meeting. "Someone needs to catch that dog before something bad happens." The local police chief, Inspector Rafiq, was called in to look into the matter. A man in his late 30s, with a calm demeanor and sharp eyes, Rafiq had seen his share of odd cases in Mirpur. But this one intrigued him. There was something unusual about the dog's behavior and its bond with Amina. Rafiq arranged to speak with Amina after school. Sitting on a bench under a large banyan tree, he asked gently, "Do you know where the dog comes from?" Amina shook her head. "No, he just started following me a few months ago. I don't know why. Does he ever come close to you?" "No," she said quietly. "He stays behind, watching. It feels like he's protecting me, like a shadow." Rafiq nodded slowly, thinking. "Have you ever seen this dog near your home?" Amina's eyes flickered. "Sometimes at night I think I see him near the woods outside town, but I'm too scared to go there." The mention of the woods caught Rafiq's attention. That area was known for old abandoned houses, some with dark histories. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to form. That evening, Rafiq decided to follow Amina discreetly on her journey home. From a distance, he watched the dog's movements closely. It never got closer than a few meters, but stayed glued to Amina's every step. When Amina paused to tie her shoe or catch her breath, the dog would sit quietly, eyes scanning the surroundings. At one point, near the edge of town where the trees thickened into a dark forest, the dog suddenly stopped. It stared toward the woods, ears pricked. Amina glanced back, a flicker of hesitation crossing her face. For the first time, Rafiq saw a glimpse of fear in the little girl's eyes. That night, as the town slept, Inspector Rafiq sat in his office, piecing together the strange behavior and Amina's words. A stray dog following a child daily was rare, a dog watching from a distance, protective but afraid to approach. Even rarer. Something told him this case was about more than just a stray dog and a little girl. There was a story buried deep, waiting to be uncovered, a secret hidden in the shadows of the past. Inspector Rafiq wasn't one to dismiss strange cases lightly. The quiet town of Mirpur rarely had anything unusual to deal with, but this dog, and the girl it followed, were different. The more he observed, the more convinced he became that this was no ordinary stray. There was a pattern, a mystery hiding behind those soulful eyes, and the girl's calm acceptance. Early the next morning, Rafiq prepared for his own stakeout. He positioned himself along the route Amina took to school, hidden behind a cluster of trees near the edge of town. He arrived just before dawn, coffee in hand, and settled in to watch. Minutes later, Amina emerged from her aunt's house, steady, as ever, with her familiar backpack slung over one shoulder. True to form, the scruffy dog appeared shortly after, slipping quietly from the shadows like a guardian angel. Rafiq watched closely. The dog maintained its distance but never strayed far. When Amina stopped to tie her shoe, the dog immediately sat down, alert and watchful. When she resumed walking, it followed, pacing perfectly, What struck Rafiq most was the dog's incredible patience and discipline. He had seen many strays in his career, some aggressive, some scared, but never one so composed, so deliberate. After Amina disappeared into the schoolyard, the dog lingered for a moment, then turned and padded silently back toward the edge of town. Curious, Rafiq waited until the dog disappeared from view before following at a distance. The dog's path led toward the outskirts where the trees grew thicker, the air cooler and damper. The further Rafiq followed, the clearer it became that the dog was heading to a specific place, a small neglected patch of woods at the town's edge. Rafiq pulled out his phone and quietly called his assistant at the station. "Keep an eye on that girl and the dog," he instructed. "I'm going to see where this leads." As the dog reached the woods, it slowed, sniffing the ground with keen interest. It moved carefully, almost reverently, like it was returning to a place it knew well. Rafiq crouched behind a fallen log and peered into the dense thicket. There, hidden by overgrown bushes, was the crumbling shell of an old farmhouse, its blackened timbers and shattered windows telling a story of fire and destruction. Rafiq's heart skipped a beat. That farmhouse was notorious in Mirpur's recent history. Years ago, it had been the scene of a devastating fire that had claimed the lives of a young couple, Amina's parents. He had heard the tragic story many times. The fire had gutted the house, destroying everything. The parents hadn't survived, but the little girl had mysteriously escaped unharmed, taken in by her aunt afterward. Now, as Rafiq watched, the dog lingered near the ruins, occasionally glancing back toward the town as if waiting for something or someone. The connection between the dog, the girl and the burnt house gnawed at Rafiq. What had the dog been doing there all this time? How had it survived the fire? And why was it so intent on following Amina every day? Determined to find answers, Rafiq decided to interview those closest to Amina, her aunt, neighbors, and anyone who might remember details about the night of the fire. Maybe someone had seen something no one had spoken about. That afternoon, Rafiq visited Amina's aunt, a quiet woman named Mariam, who lived in a modest house on the edge of town. Mariam welcomed him warmly, but seemed wary when the topic of the dog came up. "She's a brave girl," Mariam said softly. "But that dog, I don't know. It appeared not long after the fire. I've never seen it get close to her, but it's always there." "Do you know where the dog came from?" Rafiq asked gently. Mariam shook her head. "No. We thought it was a stray at first. But it's different. It acts like it belongs to Amina." As Rafiq spoke with Mariam, a deep sense of something unresolved settled over him. This dog wasn't just a random animal. It was connected to Amina's past, perhaps even to the fire itself. Back at the station, Rafiq pulled out old reports and photos of the burned farmhouse. He studied them intently, trying to spot any clues that might explain the dog's strange loyalty. He began to plan a cautious approach, capturing the dog safely for examination, tracing its movements, and uncovering the secret that had held the town in silence for years. The deeper he delved, the more he realized this case was far from simple. It was a story of loss, survival, and a bond that neither time nor tragedy had broken. And for Amina and the mysterious dog, the truth was only just beginning to emerge. The charred remains of the old farmhouse stood like a silent monument at the edge of Mirpur's forest, a constant reminder of tragedy. Inspector Rafiq had spent the last few days piecing together every detail he could find about the fire that had claimed Amina's parents years ago. Now, standing before the blackened walls and broken windows, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The day of the fire had been etched into the town's memory. A fierce blaze had engulfed the house late at night, trapping the family inside. Neighbors had rushed to help, but the flames were too intense. When firefighters finally subdued the inferno, only ashes and rubble remained. Amina, then just a toddler, had somehow survived, but her parents had not. No one had ever understood how she had escaped. Some whispered it was a miracle, others believed fate had intervened. The truth, however, had always been shrouded in mystery. Rafiq carefully examined the perimeter of the ruined house, noting scorch marks and scattered debris. Then his eyes caught something unusual near the back, a small patch of disturbed earth beneath a fallen beam. Kneeling, he brushed aside ashes to reveal a worn leather collar, blackened by fire but still intact. His pulse quickened. Could this collar belong to the dog that had followed Amina every day? Was this dog Sheru, the family's lost pet, somehow still alive after the fire? The thought was almost unbelievable, but Rafiq's instincts told him to dig deeper. Back at the station, he accessed old police reports and fire investigation documents. There had been suspicions of foul play at the time, but no concrete evidence. The fire was officially ruled accidental, an electrical fault in the kitchen, yet several inconsistencies had never been addressed. Meanwhile, news about Rafiq's investigation spread through the town. Whispers and rumors grew louder, and some neighbors began to talk more openly about the night of the fire. Mrs. Farida, an elderly woman who had lived next door to the family, approached Rafiq with a cautious look in her eyes. "I remember that night," she said quietly. "There was something strange. I heard a dog barking frantically outside, but then it suddenly stopped, like it was trying to warn us, or protect someone." Rafiq nodded, absorbing every word. "Do you remember what kind of dog it was?" he asked. Mrs. Farida hesitated. "It was a big dog, brown and white with a strong bark. Everyone called him Sheru. Sheru." The name matched what Amina's aunt had told him, the family's beloved dog. Rafiq's heart pounded with the possibility. Sheru had somehow survived the fire. But why had he disappeared? Why had he returned only recently to follow Amina every day? Determined to uncover more, Rafiq visited the local animal shelter and checked with nearby villages. No one had reported finding Sheru after the fire. Had the dog wandered for years? Had he been hiding, waiting for the right moment? Late that evening, Rafiq returned to the woods near the farmhouse ruins, hoping to find clues. The dog appeared again, as if sensing his presence. For a long moment their eyes met. The dog's gaze filled with a mix of recognition and sadness. Rafiq whispered softly, "Who are you protecting, Sheru?" The dog didn't answer, but something in his stance spoke volumes. This was no ordinary stray. This was a loyal guardian bound by love and loss. Over the next few days, Rafiq worked with animal experts to examine the dog from a safe distance. They noticed the dog had scars and burns on his coat, evidence of surviving the fire. The realization sent a ripple through the town. Sheru was alive. And now, with Sheru watching over her, Amina's story was taking a new turn, one filled with hope, mystery, and the quiet strength of a bond that could never be broken even by fire. As news of Sheru's survival began to circulate quietly through Mirpur, Inspector Rafiq felt the case deepening beyond the physical evidence. There was a story that needed telling, a story locked inside a frightened little girl and a dog that had waited years in silence. Rafiq decided it was time to talk to Amina more closely. He invited her to the police station under the pretext of helping find a safe home for the dog. Amina arrived clutching her backpack, her expression calm but wary. Sitting across from her in the interview room, Rafiq gently asked, "Amina, can you tell me about the dog? When did he start following you?" Amina's dark eyes flickered, searching for the right words. "It was after the fire. I don't remember much from before, but one day I saw him waiting near the old house. He didn't run away. I felt something." "Something like what?" Rafiq pressed carefully. "Like he knew me. Like he was waiting to find me," she whispered. Rafiq nodded. "Do you remember anything from before the fire? Your parents? Or the house?" Amina's small hands trembled slightly. "Not much, just shadows and flames. I was scared. But Sheru, he was there. He made sure I got away." Her voice was steady, but the pain beneath it was unmistakable. Rafiq realized that Amina's memories were fragmented, clouded by trauma, but tied closely to the dog. Sheru had been her protector, her silent guardian when she had nowhere else to turn. Determined to help her, Rafiq reached out to a child psychologist in the town, Dr. Nadia, hoping to gently unlock Amina's past and give her a chance to heal. Dr. Nadia was kind and patient. Over several sessions, she encouraged Amina to talk about what she could remember: the fire, the night terrors, and the loneliness she felt after losing her parents. Slowly, more details emerged. Amina described Sheru's bravery during the fire. How he had barked and nudged her awake, guiding her through smoke and flames. How after she escaped he had disappeared, only to return years later when she started walking to school alone. There were nights when I thought I heard him outside my window, Amina told Dr. Nadia softly, but I was too scared to look. Meanwhile, the town began to change. Where once fear and suspicion ruled, a growing sense of community and compassion took root. Parents started to see the dog not as a threat, but as a symbol of loyalty and hope. At school, Zara and other children formed a small group to watch over Amina and Sheru, bringing food and water to the dog and cheering the little girl's courage. Inspector Rafiq worked with the local animal shelter to provide medical care for Sheru. The scars on his body told a story of survival, but his eyes shone with resilience and love. One afternoon, as Rafiq observed Amina and Sheru playing in the schoolyard, he felt a sense of closure and new beginnings. The girl who had walked alone for so long was finally finding safety, surrounded by people who cared. But the mystery of the fire still lingered. There were unanswered questions about how it started and whether someone had wanted to harm Amina's family. Determined to uncover the full truth, Rafiq began reviewing old leads and interviewing townspeople again. One detail caught his eye. A neighbor had reported seeing strange figures near the house in the days before the fire. Could it have been arson? The possibility sent a chill through Rafiq's spine. If someone had intentionally set the fire, why? And who would want to hurt? An innocent family? As Rafiq dug deeper, he realized that the story of Amina and Sheru was far from over. The past held dark secrets, and revealing them might change everything the town thought it knew. But for now, the little girl walked confidently to school each day with her faithful dog trailing behind, no longer just a stray but a guardian and a symbol of hope. Inspector Rafiq's investigation into the fire took on a new urgency. The possibility of arson cast a shadow over Mirpur, and the peaceful town found itself gripped by unease. Rafiq knew that uncovering the truth wouldn't be easy. The fire had happened years ago, and memories faded with time, but some residents still remembered details they hadn't dared to share. One afternoon, Rafiq sat across from an older man, named Abdul, a neighbor who had been among the first to arrive at the burning farmhouse. Abdul's hands trembled as he recalled that night. "There were strange men," Abdul said quietly. "I saw them lurking near the house days before the fire. They weren't from around here. I thought they were troublemakers, but I didn't say anything. Who would believe me?" Rafiq's pulse quickened. "Can you describe them? Did you hear or see anything else?" Abdul shook his head. "No, but I remember the night before the fire I heard shouting. It was tense. I stayed inside, scared." With this new lead, Rafiq began piecing together a timeline. Who were these men? What had they wanted with the family? He dug into old police reports and town records, trying to connect dots. The family, though quiet and respected, had recently been involved in a dispute over land near the outskirts of Mirpur. The land had valuable minerals beneath it, and there had been rumors of attempts to pressure the family into selling. Could the fire have been a way to force them out? Rafiq knew he had to tread carefully. The town was small, and accusing anyone without evidence could stir unrest. But justice for Amina's family demanded answers. Meanwhile, Amina's life was changing. Her school performance improved, and with Dr. Nadia's help, she was slowly overcoming her fears. Sheru, now healthier and calmer, was a constant companion, his presence bringing her comfort. One evening, as Rafiq reviewed case files late at the station, he received a call from a local informant. The voice on the other end was cautious but urgent. "There's something you should see," the informant said. "Meet me near the old mill after dark." Rafiq agreed, sensing this could be a breakthrough. That night, under the cover of darkness, Rafiq met the informant near the abandoned mill on the edge of town. The informant handed him a faded photograph showing two men standing near the farmhouse shortly before the fire. The faces were blurry, but one man's features struck Rafiq as familiar. "I think I know who that is," Rafiq muttered, studying the photo. "This could be the link we've been looking for." Back at the station, Rafiq pulled up records of local troublemakers and suspects with a motive. Among them was a man named Kamran, a businessman with a shady reputation and known for aggressive tactics to acquire land. Rafiq wondered if Kamran had orchestrated the fire to scare the family into selling their property. The pieces were falling into place, but Rafiq needed proof. At the same time, Amina's world was shaken by another event. One afternoon, Sheru disappeared. Amina searched frantically, her heart pounding with fear. When Sheru finally returned hours later, he carried something in his mouth, a small, torn piece of fabric, darkened by soot. Amina's eyes filled with tears. "This came from the old house," she whispered. Rafiq examined the fabric carefully. It was a key clue, perhaps from the night of the fire or something left behind. The discovery reignited Rafiq's determination. He knew the truth was close, and that Sheru, loyal and brave, was more than just a stray dog. He was a witness to the past, a protector of secrets. As the investigation deepened, tensions in the town rose. Some residents feared old wounds reopening. Others wanted justice for Amina's family. Rafiq prepared to confront the shadows that lingered in Mirpur, ready to uncover the secrets hidden in smoke and silence, and to finally bring peace to a little girl and her faithful dog. Inspector Rafiq sat in his office, the torn piece of fabric laid out carefully on his desk. It was a small fragment, blackened with soot and dirt, but to him it was a crucial piece of the puzzle. This was not just debris from the fire. It was evidence pointing toward the truth behind the tragedy that had haunted Amina and Sheru for years. He called in his forensic team to analyze the fabric. The preliminary report came back quickly. The fabric belonged to a high-quality jacket, one commonly worn by city businessmen, not the rural folk of Mirpur. This fit the profile of Kamran, the local businessman who had a vested interest in the land. Rafiq's suspicions about Kamran grew stronger. The next day, he arranged to visit Kamran's office under the guise of routine questioning. Kamran greeted him with a confident smile, but there was something cold and calculating in his eyes. "I've heard about the dog," Kamran said smoothly. "And the girl. Tragic story, but old news." Rafiq didn't flinch. "We're reopening the case. There's evidence suggesting the fire might not have been accidental." Kamran's smile faded for a brief moment. "Be careful, Inspector. Digging up the past can be dangerous." Rafiq left the office knowing Kamran's warning was more a threat than advice. Back at the station, Rafiq dug deeper into Kamran's business dealings. He discovered a trail of shady transactions and intimidation tactics used to acquire land from struggling families. The evidence painted a picture of greed and ruthlessness. Meanwhile, Amina's connection with Sheru grew stronger. The dog no longer just followed her. He seemed to understand her moods and protect her in subtle ways. At school, the other children were curious but respectful, sensing the special bond between the girl and her guardian. One afternoon, as Amina played in the park, Sheru suddenly became alert, his ears twitching. He sprinted toward a thicket and began digging furiously. Amina ran after him, heart pounding. Sheru uncovered a small rusted box buried beneath the earth. Inside, wrapped carefully, were old photographs and documents, belongings of Amina's parents that had survived the fire. The discovery was a breakthrough. The documents revealed that Amina's parents had been fighting legal battles over their land, resisting pressure to sell to Kamran's company. There were letters threatening them, and even a police report that had mysteriously disappeared from the official files. With this new evidence, Rafiq confronted Kamran again. This time, Kamran's facade cracked under pressure. "You don't know what you're meddling with," Kamran hissed. "Stay out of it." But Rafiq was undeterred. He intensified surveillance on Kamran and his associates. One evening, as Rafiq reviewed surveillance footage, he noticed a shadowy figure entering the ruins of the farmhouse. The person was carrying what looked like a canister, possibly accelerant. Rafiq's heart raced. He had found the smoking gun. He prepared to arrest Kamran, but the businessman had already vanished. In the days that followed, Kamran's disappearance became the talk of the town. Rumors swirled, but Rafiq stayed focused on protecting Amina and Sheru. The little girl, once haunted by loss, was now a symbol of resilience and hope. At the school's annual festival, Amina walked hand in paw with Sheru, surrounded by friends and neighbors. The town had come together, united in their support. Rafiq watched from a distance, satisfied that justice was within reach. The fire's secret was finally unraveling, and the loyal dog who had walked 7 kilometers every day had become the key to a family's healing. The town of Mirpur was alive with anticipation. After months of quiet investigation, Inspector Rafiq finally had enough evidence to move against Kamran and his associates. The once feared businessman was now a fugitive, his empire crumbling under the weight of the truth. For Amina, life had slowly begun to feel safe again. With Sheru by her side, she no longer walked alone or afraid. The dog, once a stray following her through dusty roads and fields, had become her protector, her friend, and her connection to a past she was just beginning to understand. One bright morning, Rafiq arrived at Amina's school with a special announcement. The whole town had gathered for the unveiling of a memorial dedicated to Amina's parents, a symbol of resilience and justice. The memorial was placed near the ruins of the farmhouse, now cleaned and preserved as a reminder of the past and a beacon for the future. Rafiq took the microphone and spoke to the crowd. Today, we honor not only the memory of a family lost, but also the courage of a little girl and a loyal dog who reminded us all what true loyalty and strength mean. Amina stood beside Sheru, her small hand resting gently on his fur. She looked out at the crowd, feeling a warmth she hadn't known before, a warmth born of community, love, and healing. The legal battle to reclaim the family's land was underway, with the support of the townspeople who had rallied behind Amina. Kamran's crimes were exposed in court, and several of his accomplices were arrested. Justice was slow but certain. For Rafiq, the case was a reminder of why he became a police officer, to protect the innocent and seek truth, no matter how long it took. Days later, Amina visited the farmhouse ruins with Sheru. The wind whispered through the trees, and sunlight filtered softly through broken beams. She knelt by the memorial plaque, tracing her fingers over the engraved names of her parents. Sheru nudged her hand with his nose, a silent promise that he would always be there. Amina whispered, "Thank you, Sheru, for saving me, for staying with me." The dog wagged his tail gently, as if understanding every word. As the sun set over Mirpur, a new chapter began. Amina's story was no longer one of loss and fear, but of hope, strength, and the enduring bond between a girl and her dog. Sheru's journey from stray to hero became a legend in the town, proof that loyalty knows no bounds, and that sometimes the greatest protectors come from the most unexpected places. And so, the little girl who walked 7 kilometers every day, followed by a faithful stray, found her place in the world, not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of courage and the quiet power of love. The end.